The committee is meeting for the purpose of receiving evidence concerning matters related to the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. I'd like to remind members and the witnesses, before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, please unmute your microphone and then return to mute when you are finished speaking. I noticed that the floor audio is, thank you, it's now on mute. When you are ready to speak, please unmute your microphone and then return to mute when you are finished speaking. When speaking, again, I'll ask, please speak slowly and clearly so the translators can do their work. As is my normal practice, I will wave the yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining in your intervention. And when you see the red card, that means you have run out of time. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. With us today, we have Dr. Arthur McDonald, Gordon and Patricia Gray Chair in Particle Astrophysics, Emeritus Nobel Physics Laureate 2015, and from Queen's University. From Bidali, we have Mr. Eric Kriski, Chief Executive Officer and Co-founder. From Dynamite Network, Mr. Jeff Musin, President and Chief Executive Officer. From Starfish Medical, Mr. Scott Phillips, CEO, and John Walmsley, Executive Vice President, Strategic Relationships. From Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, Mr. Joe McBrearty, President and CEO. From Snow Lab, Mr. Nigel Smith, Executive Director. And from Triumph, Mr. Jonathan Bagger, Director. We will be receiving the 5 first witnesses will be giving testimony, and Snow Lab and Triumph are here in terms of support for responding to questions. With that, each witness will present for 7 minutes, followed by the rounds of questions. We will begin with Dr. Arthur McDonald. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to testify. So my story today is about a team of talented Canadian scientists and engineers working with international collaborators and Canadian industry who were inspired by the opportunity to apply their skills to make a difference in the COVID-19 pandemic. When confronted by a daunting world situation, we all ask ourselves, what can I possibly do to help? And I personally was presented with just such an opportunity back in March when I was contacted by my colleague, Professor Cristiano Gabbiati, in Milan, Italy, from the midst of the worst region for COVID-19 at the time, who said, I think that we can use the skills that we have developed for our experimental search for dark matter particles to build ventilators and save lives. It was apparent to me that our skills in gas handling for the large liquid argon baths used in our underground experiments at Snow Lab and in future in Italy could be directed in this way if we could build a diverse and dedicated team to work on the project. So I immediately called the directors of the Canadian National Labs who are with us today, Triumph in Vancouver, where researchers were already collaborating on our dark matter research, Canadian Nuclear Laboratories Chalk River, where I knew there were very skilled engineers working on nuclear reactors and their safety systems, Snow Lab, our world-leading underground laboratory in Sudbury, and the MacDonald Institute, a Canada First Research Excellence Fund project with skilled scientists at universities across the country. I received an immediate positive response from the lab directors and an equally positive response from the scientists and engineers who proceeded to work night and day, 7 days a week, to create a straightforward, easy to construct, and relatively inexpensive ventilator. Our international team, led by Professor Gabbiati, including INFN institutes in Italy and Fermilab in the United States, created a working model on the benchtop in about 10 days and took it to a hospital in Monza for testing on a human breathing simulator. Our simplified ventilator requires fewer than 40 parts compared to traditional ventilators that can require over 1,000 parts. We received immediate feedback and very valuable feedback from doctors in Italy, Canada, and the United States on how to improve the design and meet the requirements for safety necessary for patient use. We immediately began working with an Italian manufacturer, Elemaster, on industrializing the design, and with a Canadian partner company, Vexos, in Markham, and their subcontractor, JMP Solutions in London, Ontario, to optimize the manufacturability and reliability of the device. The ventilator concept is simple. You wish to deliver oxygen-enriched air to a patient in a careful, regulated way. This is done by an inhalation valve and an exhalation valve that are open and closed sequentially with precise control of the pressure and timing of the cycle. Our device accomplishes this with the valves controlled by readily available programmable microcomputers and interactive display units, which are very familiar to our scientists and engineers for their normal work. Of course, in practice, ventilator design becomes much more complicated. You must make the device safe in all conceivable situations, so many safety valves and other auxiliary equipment must be added. The programming must make sure to meet all the patient's needs and be easily displayed and controlled by doctors and respiratory technicians. In this, we were greatly helped by the skills of our electronics and programming specialists at Triumph and our mechanical engineers and safety experts at Chalk River, working with our international team from home in most cases. Of course, our team is very used to collaborating via the web. You may remember that the World Wide Web was actually invented by a particle physicist working at the CERN laboratory in Geneva to enable effective communication and collaboration with his colleagues. We have used the internet daily in our collaborations for many years. So our team produced a ventilator, which we called the Mechanical Ventilator Milano, MVM, tested it extensively, and received the United States Food and Drug Administration emergency use authorization in about 6 weeks. Quite a remarkable achievement. Our Canadian model, as manufactured by Vexos and JMP, must receive Health Canada authorization before deployment here to ensure that any small part differences from the Italian base model due to supply chain availability will have no significant adverse effects. We're confident that we will meet the Health Canada requirements because many of these requirements are very similar to those that passed testing for the US FDA authorization. From the beginning, we as scientists have taken an open license approach to our work, publishing scientific papers on the basic design and testing as the design progresses. Our open presentations are similar to what one would present for a patent application, but we will not seek a patent. Rather, we're making the information available under an open license for maximum international value in our current crisis situation. Our Canadian and international companies have put a lot of effort into translating this design into an industrialized product and obtaining medical authorization. And that would also be necessary for companies picking up this design in any other country. We have benefited greatly by strong assistance from ISCD and Health Canada. Following their initial review of our project, they issued a letter of intent to Vexos that inspired them to devote resources to the development work, which has now culminated in a signed contract with the federal government for 10,000 of these ventilators. The ventilators will be supplied starting at the end of June and ramping up to a rate of over 800 a week shortly thereafter. We're also very grateful for donations from philanthropists, including the Robert Sobey Foundation, the Lazaridis Family Foundation, Josh Felker, and a number of other donors that have made it possible for us to meet a number of research needs during this work and to achieve our design within a short time window. We're very proud of the way the Canadian scientists, engineers, national labs, and manufacturers have come together so effectively for this humanitarian effort. I'm continually amazed at the skill and at the dedication of members of our team in their work on this project. It's clear that Canada's continued investment in national laboratories and universities has created tremendous expertise in science, engineering, and leading edge manufacturing. Our
Dr.
strengths in
Dr. McDonald,
I
my
have one more
apologies.
sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
Our strengths in all these areas makes it possible for us to be an innovative nation and to provide rapid assistance in areas of need. I hope that our effort to save lives and that will save lives and that we can contribute to our country's positive response to this daunting world challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Missed it by a
Dr.
little
McDonald.
bit.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Our next presenter is Mr. Kriski from Bidaldi. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Distinguished members of the House, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bidaldi, a financial technology startup based in Calgary, Alberta, that is using blockchain technology to reduce fraud and increase efficiency in payments. We are backed by some of Canada's most prominent angel investors, and we recently released a white paper that evaluates how blockchain technology could save costs, reduce fraud, and provide the government with better visibility into the effectiveness of stimulus efforts. Recently, I had the opportunity to speak about the future of money during the World Economic Forum Week in Davos, Switzerland in January. And our company participated in this year's blockchain innovation stream provided by Canada's top-tier accelerator, Creative Destruction Labs in Toronto. We're also advising various governments on their digital currency initiatives. First, I would like to thank all government officials and employees for your recent efforts in response to this pandemic. The pace at which programs and policies have changed has been astounding, truly a Team Canada effort. In particular, I would like to thank Ministers Joly, Ng, and Baines for your consultations with small business and technology companies. These have been critical to implementing the measures that thus far have prevented the collapse of the technology sector, which is critical to Canada's recovery. As well as Madame Rempel-Garner's past efforts in developing the precursor to Western Diversification's Business Scale-Up and Productivity Program, which has been instrumental in supporting businesses in the West. In a report produced by the Startup Genome Project, globally, technology startups are the #1 engine of economic growth and job creation. In 2018, we saw a total of $3.7 billion of VC investment in Canadian startups. And according to the OECD, Canada now ranks #3 in the world for venture capital investments. Furthermore, some of the most valuable companies of the world, such as Amazon, Google, Facebook, Airbnb, and Uber, were born during a financial crisis. Considering our increasing national debt, in order to secure the future of Canada's economy, we need to take bold and rapid action, as we've already seen is possible. This will undoubtedly require continued investment into frontier technologies, and it would be prudent to enable Canadian taxpayers to benefit from the upside potential beyond employment and corporate taxes paid. However, the biggest challenge that many Canadian startups face is raising capital. Due to their historical fund performance, Canadian venture capital funds tend to be more risk-averse compared to their foreign counterparts, and just aren't investing as often as is required. As a result, many Canadian startups need to raise capital from VCs outside of Canada or from angel investors and family offices. According to reports from NACO and Alberta Enterprise Corp, on average, over 85% of early-stage startup investment comes from angel investors. And from the CVCA, venture capital funding fell 7.5% in the first quarter of 2020. Furthermore, modeling by the IEC shows that a 25% drop in employment for tech startups would wipe out 274,000 high-skilled jobs across Canada. This effect is compounded in the prairies. Just when the startup ecosystems were beginning to mature, in 2019, Western Canada had the highest level of angel investments in the last decade, and many of those angel investors are now facing a liquidity squeeze as a result of the economic blow to the energy, real estate, and agricultural sectors, where the majority of their wealth was created. As a result, this deal flow has ceased, and many innovative startups are at risk of failing. If this is not remedied soon, we will lose over a decade of progress and hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D investment. The Canadian government can address this core issue by implementing an investment matching program similar to recent proposals in the United Kingdom and Germany. This could be administered via the regional programs such as WD and FedDev, or Canada could develop a new sovereign wealth fund. While this would help ensure Canadian companies remain Canadian-owned, the intent is not to nationalize industries. This would simply be another funding option available for any qualifying startup that would relieve the liquidity crunch we are currently experiencing and attract more investment into Canadian technology companies from Canadian VCs, accredited and foreign investors. Today, Canadian taxpayers are already taking on the same risk via funding programs such as SHRED, IRAP, and ISED, which currently de-risk the returns primarily for the benefit of foreign investors. Why not have the opportunity to provide returns back to all Canadians that could close the gap on our national debt? This isn't a new idea. FedDev previously had the Investing in Business Innovation Program, which successfully matched accredited angel investments up to $250,000. Over the last decade, as a technology entrepreneur, I have had the opportunity to see the future that Canadians are building today. And I can tell you that this future is bright, but I can also tell you that right now this future is at risk. Alberta, as a result of declining energy prices, in particular, has been hit hard. This is not just an Alberta problem, but a Canadian problem. Undoubtedly, our energy and agriculture sectors need support, but we also need to desperately diversify our economy, and developing frontier technology companies in Alberta is critical to this. Now, more than ever, is the time for Canada to take bold action, which will propel us into the next decade as a world leader and set Canada up for future generations of prosperity. Thank you for the opportunity to share my opinions. And I'd be happy to have further discussions about these proposals at your convenience. Keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. Our next witness is Mr. Jeff Musson from Dynamic Network. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to thank the committee for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. But more importantly, I want to thank all members of our government for the work that they've done during this pandemic. In addition to being a tech entrepreneur, I'm also the founder of Coding for Veterans, a not-for-profit organization. It is from both these perspectives that I'm testifying before you today. My testimony focuses on how Canada can leverage cybersecurity as a driver of economic activity and growth in defense of our economy. Like all Canadians, I'm concerned about economic recovery post-pandemic. And, COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to not just rebuild our economy, but let's reimagine it and rebuild it better than it was before. Working from home, online medical appointments, live video conferencing, and online retail have changed our lives forever. All those sectors require a secure cyber environment to operate. As background, Coding for Veterans is a tech industry-led initiative in partnership with the University of Ottawa that retrains military veterans for jobs in Canada's cybersecurity sector. It is a unique program that delivers curriculum 100% online with professors and provides globally recognized cyber industry accreditation. My team has learned a tremendous amount related to retraining of individuals that I believe can be applied to many Canadians who are unemployed as a result of COVID-19. Not only has our program continued without interruption during this pandemic, it's actually growing. Pre-COVID-19, studies showed Canada had over 25,000 unfilled cyber jobs, and demand has increased for cyber talent during this pandemic. As we were seeking placement for our most recent grads from our program, I was intrigued by the number of calls I received from Canada's financial institutions, defense contractors, and others. I asked them, when everyone is laying off, how is it that you guys and your companies are hiring? The simple answer was, we don't have enough talent. There are many lessons to be learned from COVID-19. The N95 mask and PPE shortage taught us that we can't count on other nations to come to our rescue. Another lesson that we learned from COVID-19 is that Canada and the world was brought to its knees without one missile being launched or one foreign soldier invading our country. My fear is while we're focused on pandemics at our front door, we will leave our side door unlocked and be vulnerable to cyber attacks that will cripple our economy just as we're on the road to recovery. Earlier, this committee heard testimony from Scott Jones, who is the head of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. He and others stated during the pandemic, they have seen cyber attacks continue and be directed at our universities and medical establishments with the attempts to steal data. Mr. Jones also testified that the government of Canada relies on partnering with the private sector to protect Canadian industry. Here's the missing piece. Where are we going to find the talent to fill these jobs? It's great that we have a plan, but without enough trained workers, how do we as a country defend ourselves? The most direct answer, we need to train more cybersecurity workers. The follow-up question is, how do we do this and how do we fund it? For starters, you need a robust training framework. The Coding for Veterans program has a proven retraining template with cyber industry curriculum and certification. We have the capacity to expand our program and establish a separate cohort called Cyber Skills for Canadians that is targeted specifically at retraining unemployed workers for jobs in cybersecurity. Now, how do we pay for this? I can appreciate that the Canadian government has unprecedented fiscal challenges and is looking for out-of-the-box thinking. With this in mind, we propose retraining people for cybersecurity jobs can be 100% funded by the Industrial Technology Benefits Program, which already exists through ISED. This program states that for every defense contract awarded in Canada over $100 million, that an equivalent amount of money be injected into the Canadian economy by the winning bidder. Currently, government stats show that defense contractors owe $34.5 billion in outstanding obligations, with $2.6 billion of that yet to be identified and $850 million of that in arrears. If we can leverage just a fraction of the existing ITB program to fully fund cyber retraining, it will not cost the taxpayers of Canada 1 single cent while creating thousands of cyber jobs. In closing, I believe that we as a nation should be retraining our unemployed workers for jobs in Canada's cybersecurity industry. We can support the expansion of our digital economy by building up our cyber defenses while at the same time filling thousands of jobs. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to turn a difficult chapter in our country's history into one of our shining moments. Those are my introductory comments. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musa. And I just want to say on behalf of the INDU committee, thank you for all you're doing for our brave men and women in uniform who've served. So we greatly appreciate that. We're now going to move to Starfish Medical. I believe, Mr. Phillips, you have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to defer to my colleague, John Walmsley, to start us off.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. So I'm John Walmsley, Executive Vice President, Strategic Relationships at Starfish, and I've been leading our ventilator mission. In March, we were asked by the NGen Supercluster to evaluate 2 potential ventilator technologies that could be manufactured by a collaboration of their industrial partners. On Saturday, March 20th, 2 of our experienced engineers and I flew to Winnipeg from Victoria. A strange thing to be doing as the provinces went into lockdown. We met with Dr. Magdi Yunus, the inventor of the Winnipeg ventilator. Dr. Yunus's team had pulled 2 prototypes from deep in his basement and set them up for us to see. We spent the day wearing masks as we worked, learning all about them. The design seemed an ideal candidate for an emergency ventilator, as the technology was robust, used components that would not compete with the supply chain of modern ventilators. The interface was well thought out and simple enough for supervised use in case of corridor medicine. And the core of the system was a large piston, which we knew would suit any automotive manufacturer who might join the effort. On the plane home, which we shared with high school students glad to be returning from Germany, we were already working on the mechanical and electrical architecture for a new design based on this technology. By the end of the first week, we had defined the requirements for the system and had offers of assistance from throughout the NGen network of companies and beyond. Linamar, MacDon, and General Dynamics were among the first to provide logistical support. By the end of the second week, we had successfully presented a design to 3 expert panels, Health Canada, NGen, and ISED. A very helpful letter of intent followed. We had over 30 design engineers at this point, turning plans into reality in mechanics, electronics, software, and user interface design. By the end of April, we had a design that we called Frozen. It's still changing to react to availability of parts and testing results, but we knew what we were building in detail. The core of our engineers and subassembly suppliers across the country have been working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just on Friday at the end of May, we completed the first fully testing of our completed units, and we will be submitting for Health Canada authorization very shortly. From there, we will continue the ramp with our flexible and enthusiastic contract manufacturer, Celestica. This 2.5-month project would normally take 3 years. How have we moved so fast? Past clients in Canada and the US helped us to find a system that would be truly useful in the ICU. But the system is not fancy. All choices were made to be fast and flexible to allow for change. The Starfish team has a wide variety of experience, used to rapidly developing new medical devices through a well-proven process. Some of the team have 40 years of experience. For others, this is their first co-op term. Throughout Canadian industry, any CEO took my call. Many called Scott and me. NRC, IRAP, and NGen are governmental organizations with working personal relationships with industry and were invaluable in finding solutions. Health Canada's regulatory group have been unfailingly responsive, supporting the push while ensuring that products are safe and effective. Global Affairs, Public Works, and PHAC have all contributed wonderfully. The collaboration amongst ventilator initiatives has been open and refreshing. I check in regularly with peers at other companies. We have also provided free regulatory advice to those developing a medical device for the first time, including to Professor McDonald's initiative. Due to speed, this has not been a cheap enterprise. The common project management phrase is cheap, fast, good, pick two. Normally in our world, speed is last. Companies need the product to be good and are only willing to spend just enough. In this case, cheap has been last. In order to deliver safe product fast, we have paid for contingencies that we have not necessarily needed. We have custom machined parts in Canada rather than ordering ready-made parts from overseas, but we've still needed to source some key components internationally. But we have used overspecified parts to be sure they will work, and we are leaving much more work than normal to the manufacturing phase. We are proud to have answered a national call. Our team will be tired when they're done, but they're not done yet. Scott.
Thank you, John. I speak to you today as the CEO of Starfish Medical and also as the chair of Life Sciences British Columbia Industry Association. As the premier company in this space in Canada, we are proud to have an opportunity to contribute to this important initiative. Like so many companies in the industry, we mobilized early to develop capacity as required, but we were a little unsure how best to contribute. And it was only really when the CEO of NGen called to suggest that we step into ventilators that we actually connected the dots. And then as John elegantly laid out, we're able to mobilize quickly. Also, Life Sciences British Columbia mobilized on their own initiative, even although, like many industry associations, their lifeblood is holding events, which you can't do at this time. They hired a supply chain person, started managing PPEs. They mobilized the local industry to start assembling testing capacity and supplies. And I'm very proud of that organization and other industry associations across Canada for their contributions. We have seen a lot of well-meaning initiatives that founder, unlike Dr. McDonald's initiative, where they managed to get through regulatory, any number of initiatives by well-meaning people that did not understand the regulatory environment of our industry were not successful. By and large, we think that is a good thing that Health Canada is finding the balance between what's safe for Canadians and responding effectively at this important time. It's also evident that national borders are becoming thicker, as Jeff mentioned. And if we want to have strategic capacity for critical supplies, we have a ways to go. In Canada, the industry runs about a $7 billion per year deficit on medical devices. And so we just have a few specialized companies sprinkled across the country. And that's one observation I would like to make. But overall, we're proud of the contribution we've made and of being able to contribute, and also the contribution of government and government agencies across the country. And we feel like we've done something truly meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Joe McBrearty from Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today. My name is Joe McBrearty, and I'm the President and CEO at CNL, or Canadian Nuclear Laboratories as it's known. My testimony today is to complement that provided by Dr. Art McDonald and to perhaps provide some insight into the collaboration between so many, including those at CNL, Triumph, Snow Lab, and the McDonald Institute. Also, I'd be pleased to answer any question on the role of our national laboratories and our multidisciplinary system coupled with universities and the power of collaboration, both in times of need and perhaps equally important post-COVID and into the future. However, first, let me provide some background into the 3 Canadian national laboratory partners working alongside Dr. McDonald, our role in the project, and then a few words regarding the role of national labs and potential future benefits of deeper integration and collaboration. First off, Triumph is Canada's National Particle Accelerator Centre. It is one of Canada's premier multidisciplinary big science laboratories and is a leading subatomic physics research center internationally. Located in Vancouver, Triumph is owned and operated by a consortium of 21 Canadian universities from Victoria to Halifax. I'm joined online today by Dr. Jonathan Bagger, Triumph's director and CEO. Next, Snow Lab, another collaborator in the MVM project, is a leading science facility focused on discovery research in subatomic physics, largely neutrino and dark matter physics, but also other interdisciplinary fields using high sensitivity radioisotope assay. It is located near Sudbury, Ontario, and deep underground in the operational Valley Creighton nickel mine. I'm joined online today by Dr. Nigel Smith, the executive director of Snow Lab. Lastly, CNL, or Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, is your nuclear science and technology laboratory. Our 3,300 employees, including over 500 of the world's top scientists, engineers, and technicians, provide unique capabilities and solutions across a wide range of industries. You may be aware of some of our active projects, including research and development into small modular reactors to provide clean, reliable energy for remote communities, cybersecurity for industrial control systems, and together with Triumph, the development and production of new isotopes, including actinium-225, in our collective battle against cancer. You also may be aware of our rich past as the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, or AECL, the inventors of the CANDU reactor technology, now providing over 60% of Ontario's clean energy, or as the home of the Moly 99 production from the storied National Research Universal Reactor, that by some estimates has provided radioisotopes to 1 billion patients worldwide. As you may be aware, CNL is now operating under a government-owned contractor-operated model. In short, CNL is a private sector company managing and operating the government-owned assets and liabilities in a performance-based contract overseen by AECL, a federal crown corporation. I should note that when the pandemic started back in mid-March, AECL, our federal crown corporation, without reservation or hesitation, instructed CNL to do whatever possible we could to leverage our scientific and engineering capabilities in this global fight. Now, that ties us back to the ventilator project and some of our discoveries. Dr. McDonald established our connection to the Italian MVM ventilator effort and engaged these Canadian national laboratories to bring their complementary capabilities together for a common objective. Each lab brought specific expertise in critical areas honed by decades of experience. For example, Triumph is primarily the lead on the pre-manufacturing phase, including prototype testing, Health Canada certification, software development support, and the primary interface with the manufacturers. Snow Lab, leveraging its expertise in gaseous states, was the lead on the gas supply module and provided process mechanical support. Snow Lab also coordinated external communication requests, allowing scientists and engineers to focus solely on this vital project. At CNL, leveraging our multidisciplinary systems approach, we provided mechanical, instrumentation, software, safety, and overall engineering support. Having designed and built many reactors over the years, CNL has significant experience with formal design and development protocols, and also getting technologies out of the laboratory and into the market. I frankly am inspired by the talent at all 3 of these national laboratories. But all of our efforts would not have been possible without the tireless leadership of Dr. McDonald, whose unquestionable faith-like purpose to save lives and ability to lead in a time of crisis was key to the success of this project. And this brings me to my final point and a key discovery that I alluded to earlier. The contributions of each of these national laboratories, and by all of the scientists studying dark matter, was not part of our day jobs. Particle physicists, subatomic researchers, and nuclear scientists and engineers do not routinely go to work with a mandate to invent and build mechanical ventilators for the medical community in 60 days or less. But when needed, and most importantly, when working in combination across a broad spectrum of basic and applied disciplines, the depth and breadth of scientific and engineering excellence within Canada's network of national facilities can be redeployed to solve the most demanding and urgent of problems. Our laboratories stand ready to be of service to the nation, especially when borders are closed, international supply chains are limited, and the country needs to employ its own ingenuity and know-how to weather a storm. Coupled with our innovative spirit and our drive to provide solutions to complex problems, Canada's national labs are a tremendous asset to the nation. More importantly, when brought together, the opportunity is boundless, and the potential to propel Canada's prosperity is great. We hope that the collaboration on the MVM project has helped to demonstrate the value and the potential of the National Laboratory to Canada. On behalf of AECL and my national lab colleagues at Triumph, Snow Lab, and everyone at ACL or at CNL, we'd be pleased to work with you post-COVID to further study how a network of Canada's scientists, researchers, and engineers in its totality can make Canada more innovative and internationally competitive. Thank you for the time, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will start our first round of questions. Our first round of questions goes to MP Rempel Garner. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll just start by addressing Mr. Walmsley. 20 years ago at the University of Manitoba's Industry Liaison Office, it was actually part of my job to work with Dr. Eunice's patents related to the Winnipeg ventilator. So it's really nice to hear about him because he made such a tremendous contribution to the U of M and a certain blonde MP's early career. So that's pretty cool. I digress. Our scope of work right now, per the notice of the meeting, is the Canadian response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of our witnesses made this comment about helping to ensure Canadian companies remain Canadian, which I think is really important. The COVID-19 crisis has precipitated reports of significant devaluation of companies that hold strategic Canadian assets, including significant intellectual property, natural resources, and more. In turn, there have been questions raised about whether the current thresholds to trigger a net benefit review under the Investment Canada Act need to be adjusted, as well as what type of purchases of Canadian companies and strategic assets by state-owned enterprises of authoritarian countries should be tolerated. And I think that this issue is important. It should be looked into objectively, immediately, and is directly material to the business of reviewing the Canadian response to the COVID-19 crisis. So as such, I move that given the House motion made last week granted the committee's power to study outside of their usual scope, the Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology conduct a study on the Investment Canada Act, that this study determine the extent to which companies within strategic Canadian industries have been devalued as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, the extent to which foreign buyouts may occur, determine whether the current Investment Canada Act valuation thresholds are adequate to trigger a net benefit review given the potential extreme devaluation of companies within strategic Canadian industries, determine whether Canada should place a temporary moratorium on acquisitions from state-owned enterprises of authoritarian countries, that the study consists of no less than 4 meetings, and the study be completed by June 21st, 2020, and that the committee table its findings, and that the government table a comprehensive report. Thank you, Madam Chair. Over to you.
So with that, we have a motion on the floor, and I open the floor for debate.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
The motion on the floor, I'd like to be reviewed. 48-hour notice on the motion. Maybe when we come back, we can have discussion on it.
So technically, while it is in fact related to COVID-19 and the study that we are doing, it is admissible. However, I'd like to ask Madame Rempel-Garner if she'd like to allow the other members of the committee the opportunity to review the motion put forth so that we can actually have adequate debate and vote on that. But I turn the floor to Madame Rempel-Garner.
Thank you for deeming it admissible. I believe my staff member right now, Madam Chair, is circulating the motion in both official languages to all parliamentarians' personal accounts, as well as to the clerk of the committee. So it is in order. And I mean, I can speak to it briefly here. Here is my concern. We're getting a lot of reports in the media about this problem. And I think we need to look at it objectively. And I think that place is our committee. So how many companies could this be affected by this particular issue? In what industries? And does the ICA net benefit review trigger at the right threshold given the devaluation of assets? I'm seeing more this weekend. I saw a lot of coverage of this, and we're running out of time in June. We're at the beginning of the month already. So given that our next scheduled meeting isn't until Friday, I'm not comfortable waiting for a week to move this motion. I think it's something that is fairly straightforward and should be disposed of today.
With that, I'd like to ask if it's possible, Madame Rempel-Garner, because it's being distributed, I believe, as you mentioned, as we speak. Would it be possible that we can come back to this at the end of this meeting so that we can continue with the testimony of the witnesses we have here, and we can make sure that we leave some time at the end of the meeting to discuss? Would that be amendable to you?
Well, I'd rather put a timeline on it so that we don't run out of time to discuss it and then not meet till Friday about it.
I'd like to give the members the opportunity to see, and I understand it's being circulated, but we can always keep 10 minutes at the end of the meeting if that'd be acceptable to you so that we can discuss.
I'd prefer to start with debate if that's possible, Madam Chair. I can read it again.
Madam Chair?
I mean, it's like, look, here's the thing. We are meeting virtually. And these are the realities of virtual meetings, right? So if we were sitting in person in Parliament, we would be debating this and discussing it and not suspending, as we always do with motions. And I would like to proceed with the discussion of this motion.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Longfield?
I think we've got some incredible witnesses here that I'd really like to ask questions to. And I like your idea of taking it to the end of the meeting. I haven't seen the motion yet. I've sure heard a lot of great testimony that I want to dive into, and I wouldn't want to use this committee to not talk to the witnesses that are now in front of us.
Any further debate?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm comfortable with this. I've just studied the Investment Canada Act a number of times, and we did get the email. I'm ready to call a vote for the motion. It's straightforward. If we're going to study the Investment Canada Act, we can work out the details later. We can get to testimony. So I'd ask you to call the question and get this done. It leaves a lot of openness the way the motion's been set forth. So that's what my preference is, to call the question and get this done and hear our testimony. That would be the normal operating procedure we do in the House of Commons. So just if we can continue that'd be great, because then we can hear the testimony.
We have a few members here that would like to intervene as well. We have Mr. Erskine Smith as well as Mr. Asasi. Mr. Erskine Smith.
Thanks. I just had a question because I did listen to the motion, but I haven't seen the text and some of it flew by quite quickly. So how many meetings were you expecting to have, Ms. Rempel?
Thank you, Mr. Erskine Smith. I suggested 4. I would be open if we wanted to have a meeting to discuss business on how many we go into, but I'd like to hear from the department. I'd like to hear from members of the financial industry, people from relevant affected sectors, experts who have been giving advice in the media on this particular issue, and I'd like to get some data and quantify it. So I put the number of meetings as 4, so that would be approximately a 2-week study. I'm happy to have more than that if need be, but I think we can probably bang this out fairly quickly. The goal would be expediency, given that I would think that these transactions are being looked at right now and these situations are escalating. And I think that it's incumbent upon Parliament and our committee, it's directly within the scope of our work to provide advice to the government on this.
That makes, I mean, it sounds reasonable from what I've heard. My only concern, given I didn't know it was coming forward, is we don't have that many meetings left as before we rise. Maybe we can meet into July in some way, but there are other things we can discuss too. And I'm very interested in discussing recovery and focusing on a number of recommendations to government on what recovery ought to look like. And so it does become how we can best use finite time that we have. And so if it's 4 meetings at the expense of a series of other meetings on other topics, then some time to think about it would be nice in terms of how the calendar plays out. But in terms of a specific one-off study, it sounds reasonable.
Okay, we have Mr. Assassi.
Madam Chair, I would heed the advice that you provided. I think we've have an incredible opportunity today to hear from people who are, first of all, very, very busy, have taken time out of those schedules to benefit us from their input. And much like you suggested, it would be a much better approach for us to hash out all the details after we have heard from the witnesses. I understand the keen desire of the member to focus on this, but she had ample opportunity to bring this to our attention before. And I find it regrettable that we're not making the best of the witnesses that have very generously committed of their time to be with us today. I think there should be a process in place. Again, as all of the members have indicated, there are a number of different details that we have to look into before we can reasonably consider this motion. So I would ask that we defer this discussion till we've had a chance to hear from the witnesses and that we return to this issue, I might add, after we have heard from the witnesses.
Madam Chair, just a quick point of order. We will get our vote following the interventions of the people you had on your list because I've called for the question. So I just want to make sure we're going to have a quick vote after that so we can, just once the interventions are done. Is that correct?
Procedurally, we have to collapse debate. We still have some folks who would like to debate the motion before us. So, Mr. Lemire, vous avez le parole.
The floor is yours, sir. Mr. Lemire? Mr. Lemire? Yes, sorry, there was a bit of lag, unfortunately. I am ready to vote and support the motion. In fact, the time that we're spending to debate this motion will hamper our witnesses' testimony. So I think we're ready to vote and call the question.
Further debate on the motion before us? Madame Labropoulos?
Yeah, so similar to Nate's point, I actually sent a motion to the clerk today, or we're in the process of sending one to finalize the current study that we're doing and to have a report written and recommendations made. And just given the amount of time, we don't know exactly how long we will be sitting, and we haven't really discussed as a committee when we want this committee to end for the summer. So just maybe to have some kind of a discussion on a timeline. I have no problem with Ms. Rempel-Garner's motion, but I'd also like to make sure that we get to do this report that we're currently working on properly and that we get to take into account all of the different things that we would like to include.
Is there any further debate on the motion before us? Mr. Erskine-Smith?
So I would have thought, I mean, there's no reason to jam us with a motion like this. There's no reason to not have our committee meet in camera and discuss committee business as we normally do based on past practice and just being reasonable with one another. So if we are to put this to call the question now, I'll be voting against it just because it's incredibly unreasonable to put this forward as you have, Ms. Rempel. I mean, you are free to talk to us as colleagues. You are free to communicate with us in advance. You are free to give notice as is expected, and you don't have to, I understand. And you are also free to have an in-camera meeting where we discuss committee business as we normally do. If you're going to jam us with it, then no, although it sounds reasonable. My concern is finite time. There are lots of different things we could discuss. Is this worth 4 meetings in comparison to other things we could discuss? Maybe, but it's worth having a debate and not jamming us when we've got witnesses here. So if we're going to call the question now, fine, I'll vote against it. If it comes back, maybe it's reasonable, I can consider it at greater length, and maybe I'll vote for it.
Madame Rempel-Garner?
to Mr. Erskine-Smith through you, you might want to have a chat with your chair about informal conversations that were had about this particular meeting being a meeting to discuss business, which didn't happen in consultation with members of this committee. Afterwards, we got a notice of motion, to use the term jammed. The other thing is I do not need a lecture on my rights as a parliamentarian to move motions related to business at hand. I don't need that. So I understand this. I've tried to word it as neutrally as possible, as open as possible, so this committee can come to an objective, rational position on a very hot topic. And just because members of this committee can't think quickly enough, as so it seems, I don't need a lecture. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any further debate on the motion before the committee?
Madam Chair, I'd like to put an amendment that we look at the timeline differently, that the timeline would be after we complete this study.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor. Any debate on the amendment? Madame Rempel-Garner?
Well, Madam Chair, since I will note that there is no timeline on this study, so I don't know when it's going to be completed. I wouldn't support this amendment because right now, this is a very hot topic where there are companies, there are strategic assets where we should be talking about, are we allowing authoritarian countries and governments to purchase strategic assets in Canada? It's the headline of every news. There's a lot of stuff happening right now. I don't understand why we couldn't spend 4 meetings in the next 2 weeks and look at this important issue. I don't want it to be punted down the road. This is something that should be timely looked at immediately, as per my remarks to you. And I definitely don't want this to be punted to the end of an indefinite study that has no scope, that was forced upon us due to the suspension of the House of Commons. I don't find that acceptable.
Madam Chair, on the amendment, I won't be supporting that. It's just a filibuster from our witnesses' testimony right now. It's a straightforward motion that we have. We either support it, we don't, then we can hear our witnesses' testimonies. Any other business on that is just filibustering our current witnesses.
So with that, I'd like to know if there's any more debate with respect to the amendment that's put forward. If there is no further debate on the amendment, we will call for the recorded division on the amendment. I will turn to the clerk. Sorry, recorded votes, not division.
Yeah, no, it's a recorded division. Thank you. So the question is on the amendment of Mr. Longfield that this new study take place immediately following the current study on COVID-19. So Mr. Erskine-Smith.
Mr. Erskine-Smith, you're still on mute.
I abstain. I have no particular view on the amendment.
Okay, Ms. Lambropoulos.
In favor.
Mr. Jahouri.
In favor.
Mr. Assassi.
In favor.
Mr. Longfield.
In favor.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Opposed.
Mr. Dreeshen.
Opposed.
Ms. Gray.
Opposed.
Mr. Patzer.
Opposed.
Monsieur Lemire.
Mr. Lemire, against.
So that is 6 nays and 4 yeas.
I declare the amendment defeated. We will now move back to the original motion before the committee. Is there any further debate? Seeing no further debate on the original motion put forth by Madame Rempel-Garner, I will turn it to the clerk for the recorded division.
Okay, Mr. Erskine-Smith.
No.
Ms. Lambropoulos.
No.
Mr. Jahouri.
No.
Mr. Assassi.
Nope.
Mr. Longfield.
No.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
In favor.
Mr. Dreeshen.
Yes.
Ms. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Monsieur Lemire,
Mr. Lemire. Yes, voting for.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
I therefore declare the motion carried. With that, Madame Rempel, you still have 3 minutes and 35 seconds on the clock for your testimony.
I'm happy to cede the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we will move to the next speaker. MP Longfield, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate the witnesses coming today and for their patience with us. Mr. McDonald, I'd love to start with you. A great time at Snow Lab. You took me underground a few years back to show me firsthand the amazing work that our scientists are doing and how applied the work is that they're doing. So thank you for that, and thank you for continuing to be involved championing Canadian science. I'm interested in the open license approach. I'm also a certified pneumatic specialist, a mechanical engineering technologist. I did a lot of work putting solenoids and regulators together. I can picture the challenges that you're trying to look at in terms of safety. And also low flow, low pressure is particularly difficult in pneumatics. You need some pressure in order for valves to function, et cetera. But the open license approach of putting regulators and commercially available products together to create solutions and working cross countries, I'm interested in that.
Yes, well, thank you. Nice to see you again. And may I say, it's been an honor to testify today, and it's been fascinating to see the debate and the conclusion of a spirited discussion. So in terms of the open license, our approach to this is that basically everyone involved in the project has been doing it from a humanitarian point of view. We started with a group that is used to working in a very open way. We work in basic science, and that has been a very open topic for years, even during the Cold War. The sort of things that were being worked on in basic science were very, very open in the literature. And I think the whole world has benefited by this approach to things. In this particular case, where we were looking for something of a humanitarian nature, we wanted to do it in such a way that if there were companies in other countries that could pick up on the particular concept that we have here, which is really a modernization of another formerly used ventilator, a very simple one from the early days, known as the Manley ventilator.
Yep.
And so we took the attitude that we would publish openly, first of all, the design, and then the improvements to the design and the testing that goes along with it. None of us want to attempt to hold IP on this subject. Our manufacturers, of course, are putting in their own specific industrialization, and that's a separate question for them. But any company in the world is capable of taking our design and industrializing it and obtaining certification, of course, in the relevant jurisdiction. And it's a standard approach in science.
Terrific, thank you. And it's an approach I took through my 30-year career as well, that when you're working open, you can come to better solutions. We did have an alternate testimony a few meetings back from Mr. Balsillie on IP. It was interesting to see that you're also using the Lazaridis Foundation, and two different approaches, very different approaches to creating solutions in the marketplace. And if I could pivot over to Starfish, because you've mentioned one of the companies in my riding, Linamar, and Linamar MacDon, and I'm originally from Winnipeg and used to do a lot of work with MacDon back in the 80s. Again, looking at using the collaboration between NRC, IRAP, and NGen, and working with Health Canada, the importance of lining everything up correctly in order for the government to function correctly in terms of making the best use of all partners and at the same time getting through the regulatory hurdles that you have to get through. Could you maybe comment on the strategy that you've used there in order to draw the best from all partners in order to create a solution for Canadians?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to speak to that. So developing a novel medical device from an early idea is something that Starfish is very, very used to doing. And so in terms of technical path, we were pretty well equipped with our standard existing partners and our own capability to do that. The big challenge was the timeline, the outrageously aggressive timeline. And for that, it was a big part of the challenge was to field all the offers of help and to get the best from them, as you say. Linamar, I think, were prime movers in this. In MacDon, the team there in Winnipeg met us that first weekend and were with us a long way along the way. Also brought in a number of support on supply chain, which was a big constraint. The IRAP team, I think to cover NGen, I think NGen really, with their connections, got things started. And IRAP really helped. And an area that helped me personally was I had a lot of people calling, wanting to do and to contribute in many ways. And once we had selected this path to develop a ventilator, I needed somewhere to refer them that would not leave people lost. And I referred them to my local IRAP representative, did a fantastic job of connecting through the NRC and creating alignments. So I think creating alignments is the key point.
Thank you. Could we use that same approach on clean technology and climate change solutions?
So personal opinion is it seems like as I sit here and I look at what challenges face us, this approach where I'm talking, I said, to the highest level of companies to get immediate alignment is only applicable, I think, in the most dire challenges. But for me, I think climate change fits that category as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Notre prochain tour des questions, c'est pour...
Next round of questions. Member Savard Tremblay, you have the floor for 6 minutes, sir. Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for appearing today. My first question is for Mr. MacDonald. You spoke, in fact, in developing your project, you thanked a number of funders that brought their support. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I'm not sure if there's problems with the interpretation.
The translation, and unfortunately, my French is not adequate to the task, and so I'm wondering if there's something I need to be clicking. I thought I was going to receive a translation.
Mr. MacDonald, are you on the English channel?
I am. What channel should I be on?
You should be on the English channel for translation into English.
I believe I am, but I have heard no translation until now, and I don't know where to check on my screen if I am on the English channel. And certainly my apology.
On the bottom of your screen, do you see participants and then a little world signal and then reaction?
Yes, I see participants, yes.
Do you see English in the middle?
Yes, I do. It was off, and Mr.
Please select English, and then the translation will work.
Okay, and I really apologize at asking you to please repeat your question. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, sir. No worries whatsoever. It's good to take the time to do things properly. So you spoke in developing your respirator project. You spoke about the support of funders, and from what I understood, this financial support was useful, even crucial, to carry out this project to fruition. However, what I'd like to ask you is about the cutbacks or the insufficient funding to research and development. There needs to be public support, doesn't there? Private support is all well and good, but there needs to be taxpayer public report for this kind of project. Did that disadvantage you, and do you find it problematic? Now, when it comes to funding of research and development, there are a lot of agencies who are responsible for reviewing risk that are pointing the finger at this lack of funding. So you have to turn to the private sector. Is that a last resort as an option? I can hear a screeching sound, says the member, in the background, a hissing sound.
From me?
Go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
Shall I begin again? I think that, first of all, we had a substantial support from the Canadian National Laboratories, which of course are at their basis publicly funded, in converting their special teams to this project. And so from that point of view, we were able to proceed. The private sector companies, of course, put a lot of their resources into this, anticipating that ultimately there would be a contract for them to recoup their expenditures. But from that point of view, we had a letter of intent from the federal government early on to assuming that we were able to meet their requirements to be able to go forward with the project, and that was very helpful. If you're asking me in general about the question of funding for science, engineering, and indeed for academic activities across the country, I actually served on the Fundamental Science Review a few years ago, chaired by David Naylor. And in that review, we made a number of recommendations, some of which have been accepted by the federal government. And we're very hopeful that that perspective as to the value of funding, not only for science and engineering, but for the broad range of academic activities, is of value to the country in many ways. Of our graduates in the basic science we do, 75% of them are not university professors. They're very skilled at evidence-based decision-making, and that gets carried to the financial industry, to other technology companies or government. It's a broad spectrum that is obtained by funding academics in this country.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
The questions goes to MP Massey. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for leading, I think, through probably a historic vote the last segment that we had. There's a couple of things that are happening that I want to ask with regards to Mr. Musson. We have right now historic government spending on a number of different programs and services. We have a lot of innovation that's taking place. And then we also have a directive, even prior to this, but even more so now, to move more Canadians online, whether it be at home, whether it be through education, whether it be through business, and even on personal matters. In fact, everything from your home family experience to even getting your daily banking and a whole series of things done. Expectations have risen, even only applying for government services during this. We also heard from a number of witnesses, the Privacy Commissioner just recently, that our laws are outdated with regards to protecting privacy for individual Canadians, even the business sector. I know that for my own work on the Competition Bureau is antiquated in terms of bringing penalties on those that are bad players. And we also don't have international agreements to actually go after bad operators with regards to even some of our own trading partners. We've done some work here on the committee, and I thank the committee again for its work on fraud. And so would like to know a little bit more about the particulars of your program. It seems you mentioned the phrase leaving the side door open. Can you kind of flesh that out in terms of, as we ramp up our speed on going online, but at the same time, what's really vulnerable happening, and how does your program that you've done, it's a not-for-profit, kind of fill in that void? And you mentioned, I think, 25,000 unfilled positions before COVID.
Yes, I appreciate the question. Canada has a severe lack of talent as it relates to cybersecurity. And with our program, what we've been able to do is identify the best and the brightest that want to learn about cybersecurity. So with Coding for Veterans, and what we're proposing is to have a similar program, but targeted towards unemployed workers. With the Coding for Veterans program, we actually have all people that are interested in enrolling do a 45-minute online assessment that makes sure that they have the soft skills and the aptitude to be successful in a job related to cybersecurity. And the whole reason why that is we want as close to 100% job placement for graduates that come in the program at the end of it. And what's interesting is when you're talking about privacy, when you're talking about all these other cyber issues, tracking the bad guys, that all takes manpower, and it takes manpower that is, or people power, I should say, that's accredited, that's able to do it. Canada has a lack of sufficient talent as it relates to cybersecurity. It's an open secret. We've heard it from CSE. My own anecdotal evidence from our financial institutions, defense companies, they're clamoring for graduates coming out of our program. And I said, why can we not take this opportunity for those that are unemployed? And if these jobs are surviving this global pandemic, you know that they are stable jobs, good paying jobs, and people can get back to work.
So where I'm from, the manufacturing industry has been hollowed out in many respects, and we've seen what was predictable to me as dependency on foreign nations, including non-democratic nations, for PPE and other types of materials, because, say, for example, the auto industry, even though we have some support happening and awesome projects going on, there's been a dependency on foreign manufacturing because of wage and other types of barriers. But are we in the same circumstances that we would, if we don't fill these with Canadians, we would actually be dependent on foreign, I guess, or outside Canada jobs or people to fulfill our cybersecurity if we don't train them ourselves?
Absolutely. And what the problem is we'd have to rely on others in the Five Eyes network. And we know, we've seen this movie before. When we have to rely on foreign companies, we get bumped down the list. And what I'm proposing is let's use cybersecurity as a driver of economic activity like the Israelis do. So not only can we retrain and reskill our unemployed workers, but when we become a global leader, guess what? We can then be the experts that the world turns to.
So similar then to as this grows, I mean, we've even seen the call industry relocate back into some parts of Canada because of security issues. So instead of having that problem later, we do a training program now, and you're involved with the University of Ottawa, I believe it is, to ramp up our qualified credentials for that and not even go down the road of dependency. You stop that before it happens?
Absolutely. The PPE and it was the canary in the coal mine, in my opinion. And the University of Ottawa and the PDI program led by Mr. Serge Blaise has been a phenomenal partner to train and reskill military veterans in our program. And we said, let's apply that same framework to unemployed workers.
Yeah, we're seeing the vulnerability in our agricultural sector. Just outside my area right now, we have another COVID outbreak from one of the groups that's come inside even to try to deal with that. Thank you, Madam Chair, and my time's up.
Thank you very much. We now move to our second round of questions. Our first question comes from MP Gray. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the speakers for being here today. So something that I hear about quite often is, whether it's ventilators or testing kits, is that we hear of delays with Health Canada for approving products that might be similar in the United States or in the United Kingdom, and that we're having delays here and things seem to take longer here. And so I'm wondering, first of all, I'd like to ask Dr. McDonald is if this is something that your team has faced, and if you've got any concerns with any red tape as you've been going through your processes.
No, actually just the opposite. Health Canada has been very helpful as we've gone forward. There are some small differences between what the approval that we already have from the FDA is and what Health Canada will be looking for. But in particular, Health Canada will be providing authorization for our Canadian manufacturers. You authorize a final product in this case. And so it's important for them it's important for us to manufacture and test specifically what is being manufactured here in Canada and submit to them for the final approval. We've had guidance as to what are the characteristics they're looking for, and they have offered us a 3 to 5 day turnaround once we have submitted the device for authorization. So no, I found Health Canada to be very good. Thank you.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. When we look back into January, it was January 30th, where the World Health Organization declared a public health emergency of international concern. And it was back then that they were making statements and recommendations at that time and going into February, telling countries to mobilize and prepare, even if you don't have incidents in your country yet. And so as we look at our timeline here, it was just on May 27th where our health minister signed an interim order to accelerate access to COVID-19 related products, a full 4 months later. And so my first question is to Dr. McDonald. Do you feel that if we would have mobilize sooner and actually put some plans together sooner, that we would have had a greater impact on this crisis? And when did you start your process? I believe you had said it was sometime in March. So could you explain your timeline and your thoughts on whether we could have been further ahead on this if we would have started the work back earlier this year?
We started our project in Italy on March 19th, in Canada on March 23rd. That was predicated by the very dire circumstance in Italy that stimulated our original response. At that time, we began discussions with the people who were already active in this area, which included NRC and NGen, as mentioned by John Walmsley. In fact, I spoke with John at the time as an experienced medical equipment manufacturer, and he was very helpful, as were many people at that time, including in particular people associated with the federal government. We had an initial review of what we were developing. We actually had a device working on the benchtop within a week for our design, and it was I think April 7th that the federal government made a commitment, at least through letters of intent, assuming successful fulfillment of their conditions in such a letter.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
That was pretty good response from my perspective.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a similar question, just because I'm up against the clock here, on Starfish Medical. I know that you've got two representatives here, so I'm wondering if you could answer the similar question regarding the timeline when you became active, because we know that the pandemic was declared, it was declared on March 12th. So was it after that, or were you involved previous to that? Previous to that deadline? When did you get involved, and would you have seen different activities happen that would have been more helpful?
So running out of time, I'll answer in reverse order. So I don't anticipate that we could have reacted differently. March 19th was also when we first engaged with the Winnipeg ventilator. We'd had some preliminary conversations shortly before that. As an organization ourselves that are focused on technology, looking ahead to what technologies might be required and when is kind of outside of our remit.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have for that round. Our next round of questions goes to MP Johari. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses. A lot of great information, and I'd like to thank you for all the great work that you've done. You've made us proud, and you've made Canada proud, and you're also putting the health of many citizens of the world in the forefront. Madam Chair, I'll be splitting my time equally with MP Lampropoulos. Quick question with the 2 minutes remaining. I want to go back to Dr. McDonald, and you talked about the fact that you started the Canadian research on March 21st, and you recently submitted the Canadian design to Health Canada for approval, and you also heard feedback around 3 to 5 days of approval. Can you tell us when you actually submitted? So when do you expect to have the approval? by from a timing point of view?
No, I'm sorry. I must have misspoken earlier. We are planning to submit to Health Canada in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay.
And at that point, they have committed to us a 3 to 5 day turnaround.
Okay, so you're anticipating to submit, but during this time you've got the requirements, so you're very clear as what it is that Health Canada is looking for, and 3 to 5 days. So we are hoping in 3 weeks we will have a Canadian-made ventilator approved by Health Canada. Am I correct to understand that?
That's correct. We're hoping to start production at the end of this month.
Great. Thank you for that. You also talked about 10,000 ventilator, and then you talked about the plan for about 800 per week. Am I clear to understand that those are targeted for the federal government, and there may be partnership or orders coming from the provinces and territories, or does that 10,000 covers both or all levels of government? Can you clarify that a bit?
My understanding for and I think it would also be true for the Starfish ventilators, the ones that the federal government is contracting for are to be distributed by the federal government to the provinces and or stockpiled, or potentially, if Canada's needs are met, including future possible second waves and things of this nature, then there is at least consideration made from the statements that have been made by government individuals, including the Prime Minister. There will be consideration of possibly the deployment of these well, offering them to other countries that are in great need.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Good morning, afternoon, witnesses. Thank you for being here with us today. And I'd like to ask Professor McDonald a question with regards to Health Canada approval once again. So as my colleagues have already touched on, you are seeking the approval, and we know that in the United States, there are a lot more approvals happening at a much quicker rate, but they're not necessarily being as careful with who they're approving. And so I think it's a good thing that Canada is taking this approach of being careful and of making sure that only the right equipments are being used and the right tests are being approved of. Do you, from reading your testimony and hearing you this morning, I was under the impression that it's been a while that you've been seeking the approval, but you just said that you haven't even applied yet. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it's because what Health Canada will approve is what is manufactured in Canada. And in the last 3 or 4 weeks, what we've been doing with a combination of Canada and Europe, our partners in Europe, we have been those companies have been industrializing the design and have been securing the supply chain, which was necessary in some instances to wait until there had been a signed contract in order for them to make commitments on such supply chains. And so this week we have a complete device in Italy. We have started production of devices of a similar nature here in Canada. It will take us a few weeks to test them. Then that will be submitted to Health Canada. But in the meantime, our discussions with Health Canada to define what we should be testing and the complete set of tests that they will require, in some cases going slightly beyond what FDA has asked for, will be, they've been very helpful that way.
Thank you so much for clarifying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next round of questions goes to MP Dreeshen. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, and indeed, it's an honor for me to be able to speak here today and to ask questions. Just there was a comment that was given earlier about the lack of Canadian taxpayer research dollars into science and so on. But I remember a few years ago when I was in Germany with the science minister, and we had an opportunity to talk to folks like from Leibniz and Helmholtz and Max Planck research institutes, and really they were saying that per capita and per GDP that the Canadian taxpayer actually puts in just as much as any place else. It's to the fact that we have difficulty getting our private sector linked in. And of course, there are many reasons for that. One, of course, is we have 37 million people. We've got 6 time zones. We've got 14 different government entities. And of course, we aren't the main draw when it comes to businesses. And so I think that's important that we recognize this. Canada has always done some amazing work, which is one of the reasons why we can have amazing scientists such as Mr. McDonald be able to do the great things that they do. One of the questions, of course, and we're talking about Health Canada, and Mr. McDonald, you've just mentioned that you are anticipating 3 to 5 days because that's the assurances that you've been given from Health Canada. Unfortunately, a lot of other companies have been given similar assurances that once they have their applications in, that things are going to happen for them. And I hope that, because of your appearance here in this committee, that people will take note and that we'll see that happen. But I'm just wondering if there are certain things that you have seen, maybe you haven't experienced them yet, but the approvals that happen out of the United States or out of the European Union, we're still waiting in Canada for Health Canada. So is the Canadian process working the way it should be in these particular times, and can we improve the approvals, and are there any impediments that you've heard from those companies and researchers that have been trying to get their work on the world stage?
I really don't think I'm qualified to comment effectively on Health Canada's actions with respect to others. Admittedly, as one of the 4 major ventilator projects, Starfish being another one, that was approved by the Canadian government and given priority, we have exceptional access to Health Canada. And so we have had what I referred to in terms of turnaround time is the preferred situation. And it's very difficult for me to comment on the general situation, other than the fact that it's obvious that there is an awful lot that is being looked at carefully by Health Canada right now. And I certainly have some sympathy with them in terms of the workload that is on their plate.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, there are so many companies that have made applications, and no doubt they have to be well scrutinized. I think what you had just mentioned, that unless they are manufactured here in Canada, then they're not particularly going to become a priority. And as you had mentioned, with the work that had been done in Italy and how those approvals through the EU seem to be moving along, that you still have to go through the due diligence here in Canada. Is this part of the reason as well why we continue to hear of different things happening in the US, and people are saying, hey, why don't we get this? Why aren't we taking a look at this now and having these new procedures or new technologies being used in Canada? And if that is the case, that we have this international conflict, or at least slowdown, is there anything that we can be doing here as a committee to try to help out in this situation?
Well, I'm very pleased that we have been able to mobilize several Canadian companies to get into this needed technology. The companies themselves have been extremely cooperative and have brought expertise to the table, and I'm sure is also happening with the Starfish device, that being a company that already has experience in this area. So I think this is a case where, as you mentioned, I'll finish off. The discrepancy in terms of total expenditure in Canada, in fact, is primarily associated with R&D done here in Canada. And this is an example where company cooperation with national labs and universities has been a very positive experience. And I think it's good for the country.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Our next round of questions goes to MP Lambropoulos. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be splitting my time with MP Longfield. So I was already up before, but I'd like to follow up a little bit. I know that you mentioned that you were not looking to get a patent with whatever is produced under this project. Can you please tell us what the benefits are of this? I know that Canada should be looking to own as much intellectual property as possible, and we should be looking to can you please tell us what the balance is here and why you think it's a good thing that we won't be looking for a patent?
If you look at the expansion of COVID-19 into South America and Africa and parts of Asia, such as India, they are still on an exponential rise in terms of cases. The question of having broad manufacturing capability around the world on a new design that is potentially simpler than the quite complicated devices that are typically on the market, intended to do many other things, and potentially able to be geared up quickly by companies in other countries, particularly if they have relationships with our companies, for example. We wanted the world we wanted our device to be accessible to the world. It's as simple as that in terms of our objective in doing it in this way.
So for humanitarian purposes, mostly.
For humanitarian purposes. That's
okay.
Right.
And do you think that any conditions should be placed in these cases? Obviously, you want it to be available to everyone in the world so that we can help as many people as possible. But should there be any conditions?
The intellectual property that we as scientists and engineers have brought to this, we all wish to be as open as possible. In dealing company between our manufacturing partners and other companies, that's their objective. Although I think that they're also motivated by humanitarian reasons, and their profit margin is going to be conservative in this case.
Thank you. And last question for me, with regards to our international partners, I know that this is not a just made in Canada approach. I mean, you've been working with Italy and other countries as well. What role do these other countries play? I know that a lot of the public opinion is moving towards making things in Canada and really being dependent solely on Canadian businesses and trying to be more protectionist because we've experienced some issues with being dependent on other players. What positive role do you think the international players can play in the COVID-19 situation?
Well, let me give you an example of our dark matter studies. We're looking for particles that make up 5 times as much mass in our universe than we do, and hold our galaxy together. We have a project happening at SNOLAB right now. We are working internationally with a group that is looking at something 10 times bigger and has committed to something 10 times bigger than that to be done here in Canada, perhaps 10 years from now, when there would be tremendous economic benefits again back here in Canada. The international cooperation involving 400 scientists, 14 countries in this collaboration is the way in which Canada can both contribute to very fundamental questions where we don't know what this part of our universe is, and scaling up to try to get the ultimate sensitivity can happen at our laboratory, SNOLAB, but requires major cooperation on the scientific front from other countries. It is becoming typical in particle physics, has been for a while, and I think it will have economic benefits in the long term as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I direct my first question, if I can get 2 questions, we'll see, but to Jeff Mewson. And thank you for mentioning the work you're doing with our veterans. You know, we have a policy in place that after 12 years of service, veterans can have up to $80,000 in training, 6 years of service, $40,000 in training, including cyber training. Have you worked at all with the Future Skills Center, the center that we set up last Parliament?
We've started preliminary discussions with them. What we've been more working on is actually directly with Veterans Affairs and with CAF with their transition group. And so we've been able to sort of plug in with those. And so that's how we've connected in.
Okay, thank you. I'd love to follow up with you at another time on Future Skills Center.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next round of questions, notre prochain tour de questions, c'est pour les...
Next questions for Member Vignola. You have 2.5 minutes.
Our next round of questions. Mr. Molson, you spoke about the technological development program. I don't know what the exact name of it is, but in the past, funding under the program was actually went to a French fry plant under this IRAP program. How can Canada improve the program so that funding is invested in training and technological development and not something that we know how to do really well already?
So one thing that we've done is, and this is why we've worked with the University of Ottawa, and we work directly in with the people at ISED, make sure that there is proper framework in terms of deals or projects that are approved. How we fall in with that ISED program is they've identified cybersecurity as a priority. And in order to qualify, you also have to be a business that works with a university. And so I think the regulations or the approval of projects have tightened up significantly since that project was approved. But how our program is laid out, not only do we have the proven track record, we're able to fit within the criteria that ISED has developed.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. For the benefit of committee members and also for Canadians, Quebecers, could you give us a clear idea of what a cybersecurity breach could have on the effect of everyday people? Apparently, the 87 crisis was the result of a computer that went haywire.
Absolutely. So what you've seen right now with the pandemic being a health crisis, you can be rest assured a cyber crisis would be similar. Smart cities are connected to a grid. So you can imagine what would happen if electricity was, our grid was attacked, financial institutions, everything that's non-health related is potentially an issue that needs to be addressed here. And the more connected we are, the more opportunities the bad actors are able to access our networks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moussin. Our next round of questions goes to MP Massé. You have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really quick to Starfish Medical. How much of your manufacturing operations and your partnerships were you offshoring outside of Canada? I'm just curious as to how much of your manufacturing, as you lead people through the process, is done outside of Canada.
Absolutely. So, so the manufacturing of the systems and the subsystems is all happening in Canada.
So even prior to COVID, you were 100% of all your projects that you deal with and the companies you refer to them is within Canada?
Oh, so separate from this, the program that we're discussing today?
Yeah, just in general, because I come from an area of tool and die mold making where we've transitioned outside of just auto to aerospace, mining, medical devices, so forth. But what I'm curious to know in terms of what we need to do for the future prior to this, or when you're referring customers that go through you, are you referring to people to get their manufacturing? I've been on your website. Are they referred to manufacturers outside the global supply chain or domestic? I'm kind of getting a snapshot here.
That's a good question. I would say, so we have our own manufacturing capability that we offer people to get them up and running. And then typically we'll work with our partner's preferred manufacturer. And I would say by and large, those are all in North America, but are they in the US or Canada? I would imagine that the split is probably in line with our own work, which is about 70% in the US, 30% in Canada.
Okay, so and with that, is there any recommendations that you have for us going forward with our own, like enhancing that supply chain? Like, are you faced with maybe some manufacturing that has a weakness because of their dependency on something that Mr. Musson mentioned about the U.S. Procurement? Actually, if they didn't catch it, like even on our own defense procurement, we can get bumped by the U.S. any point in time, even when we're ahead of them in the orders. And thanks, Madam Chair. I'll let you have the final word here.
Sure, and in this case, of course, we did see there was a brief period when getting systems or components across the border was difficult, though that eased fairly quickly. It would take me a little more reflection to give you a good answer to that question, I think.
Thank you very much. Our next round of questions goes to MP Patzer. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and just thank you everybody that's on the panel today for the work that you've been doing to work for the health and benefit of not just Canadians but people around the world. As far as these the medical device, what are they called? MDEL licenses. Sorry, medical device establishment licenses. We've heard from companies in Ontario that were given 24 to 48 hour timelines to get approval, but they actually were, it was 23 days on the one report that I read. So is anybody concerned about the possibility that when you're told 3 to 5 days that it might actually take significantly longer than this? And anybody in the panel can answer that.
Well, yes, there would be concern because we want to get the devices to market as soon as we possibly can. However, we're very hopeful that given the fact that we have had discussion back and forth with Health Canada, in fact, in defining the parameters of the product that we are going to be supplying at the time that the government was seeking to define the contract, and we feel quite confident in being able to meet those requirements, including the testing necessary to prove that we meet them. We're very hopeful that perhaps the interaction we've had so far is such that perhaps they can meet that sort of deadline if they stick to devoting the resources to it that they've stated to us that they will. So yes, we're concerned, but it's kind of out of our hands. We'll just have to deal with what happens. We're optimistic.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. So aside from your efforts in producing ventilators, I wanted to ask you about your work with hydrogen-based transportation. I was reading on your website, you had stated that by 2020, so this year you were looking to have something to go with on that. So I was just kind of curious to know, are there any delays or any issues in getting to that goal?
So thanks very much for that question. So we are still working to work very closely and look at hydrogen for transport. We have some specialized catalytic technology at CNL. We are in the process of continuing to do studies for those systems. Obviously with hydrogen, safety is a number one concern, and some of the first things that we have to do to get to the hydrogen for transport is verify that the systems that we have and the processes that we are working on will meet safety requirements.
And I'm just wondering, so what is the environmental impact of this technology through energy efficiency and carbon emissions? And the reason why I'm asking this is we've seen from it's called Environment Victoria, based in Australia. And it's said that to produce 3 tons of liquid hydrogen would actually release 100 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about that.
So part of the production of hydrogen is it's an electrolysis production and also by heat. And so one of the methods that we look at into production of hydrogen is using I would say waste heat from other plants. So that heat that would actually be wasted anyway, you could actually use that heat to be able to help produce hydrogen. The second part of being able to produce clean hydrogen really would come as a result of potentially small modular reactor design and production of electricity, which can then, from a clean perspective, actually produce hydrogen from that process for the country.
How hard would it be to I guess scale it or commercialize it, right? So it becomes a readily available product, right? If we're going to use it potentially going forward, like I noticed there's already, I think Honda, Toyota, and Hyundai have already got 3 vehicles that are running off of hydrogen, and South Korea and Japan have moved to a hydrogen-based model going forward. So how to scale it to domestic capacity, what's that going to take?
So at this point in time, we are looking at taking the technology and the catalysts that we have at CNL from the laboratory benchtop to a prototype type design so that we can actually be able to show that we could move it to industrial scale. We are not ready to do that yet. We would expect that would take 2 to 3 years of testing and observation of that system to make sure that that process is that process works, that it's safe. So I think you're still looking, 2, 3, 4 years out for a technology to be on the market for hydrogen for transport systems to use.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next round of questions goes to MP Assassi. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and allow me to also thank all of the individuals who have appeared before our committee today. Perhaps I should thank them and also apologize for the procedural wrangling that occurred earlier. Now, my first question would be for Mr. Kriski. Thank you so much for your testimony. You obviously highlighted the need for us as a country to support innovators and entrepreneurs. And I can assure you that's been something that's been, very much a part of our focus at the federal government. But as you suggested, these are difficult times, and I believe you said the future is bright. Some of the developments we've seen have been incredible, but the future is also at risk. So I was wondering if I could ask you, given that you're based in Alberta, what you envision the role of provincial governments to be as well, because as you know, we have seen historic levels of federal investment, but it's also important that the provinces be part of that effort as well. And I say this against the backdrop of having seen that in Alberta, for example, Alberta Innovates for the second time in a year. There were budget cuts. They laid off over 100 employees. So could you tell us what your thoughts are on that and how crucial it is that provinces also be there to support entrepreneurs and researchers?
Yes, thanks for the question. I think it's critical that we have both support from federal, municipal, and provincial level working in harmonization towards this. And I think, particularly with when the NDP came in provincially, we did start to see a lot of that really start to take shape. With their introduction, the Alberta Investor Tax Credit Program. Unfortunately, we don't have a program now as a result recently, so that's something that I would love to see reinstated. But I think this is where potentially matching from provincial governments alongside of federal government matching would be, specifically for angel investment and venture capital investment, would be critical to helping diversify and support Alberta-based businesses, but as well across the prairies and even in BC. We are still at very serious risk here, I think, in the West. The economic climate is very different than Quebec and Ontario in terms of venture capital and angel investment. And so it's imperative now more than ever that we actually have some of this harmonized support rapidly.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. Now, I also would be remiss if I didn't ask Dr. McDonald a question. Dr. McDonald, you touched on the significance of international cooperation, how that is crucial. Given your expertise, your lengthy expertise, would you perhaps share with us what the federal government can do to better support open science and open source licensing?
Okay, open science and open source licensing are two separate questions. Open science, I think, it is important, and in fact, it was addressed in the Fundamental Science Review for the federal government to have straightforward ability to connect the federal government with international projects. People who come forward with ideas where Canada can collaborate with other countries have some difficulty in understanding exactly to whom they should be speaking. The chief science advisor is certainly one person who is clearly in the middle of this, but the question of whether you go to NRC, CFI, NSERC, various agencies, it's important to perhaps centralize the approach to international cooperation a bit more in Ottawa. And one of the things that certainly we recommended in that fundamental science review was the creation of a major overview committee on science, technology, and innovation with external experts. That has been slow in coming. There actually was a call for people to indicate interest in participating a year ago, but it hasn't happened yet. That committee could deal with large-scale international cooperation, and would be a good idea.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Our next round of questions goes to MP Gray. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was speaking with a manufacturing company the other day that makes cleaning supplies and in spray bottles, and they were saying that they can ramp up their production really quickly. However, they can't get the nozzles on the top of their spray bottles because they come from China, and they're just not able to get them. So I have a question for a representative from Starfish. I was wondering, as you're looking at putting this ventilator system together, how are you finding with the parts that you're getting? I understand that it will be produced in Canada, but as you're acquiring all the different parts of this, are they all within Canada, or do you have to access parts from elsewhere, and are you having any issues with that?
Yeah, so there's as you say, the manufacturing is happening in Canada. There's some specialist components in the system. We selected this system as something where many of the parts could be made in Canada with technology that's available. I would say key parts that we're sourcing are sensors and some of the pneumatic components where specialist industries exist elsewhere in the world, and we've been sourcing the components from there. And as we do this, of the volumes that we're asking for on the timelines that we're working with, and with companies that we don't have existing relationships with, sometimes it's been a little slow. That has been helped with our supply chain expertise that our subcontractor Celestica has brought. But still, it's getting all the parts to arrive in time is definitely a big part of the challenge.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question for Dynamite Network. What an interesting project it sounds like you're working on with getting these veterans to work on cybersecurity. And I was wondering, as you bring on these veterans, can you maybe explain a little bit what the process is, and if you've got any challenges technologically? Like, do you give them you send them out certain computers and technology so that they can operate? Can you maybe just describe that a little bit, how that works, and how you're finding these veterans as well? How do they come to you, or do you go out and find them?
So I'll quickly reply to all these very interesting questions. So let's start off. Where do we find them? My team and myself actually last year visited 18 different military bases as part of their job fairs. So we actually went right to the source. The problem was the moment COVID-19 hit, that was our main source of doing outreach. So we switched to a social media strategy. And what was amazing was that we actually saw an increase in numbers when we use social media as the outreach to get people into the program. And then the actual program itself, we initially from the outset designed it to be taught 100% online with professors. And we've set up virtual labs that simulate what it is to work inside a cyber operations center. And the curriculum as part of this program, we actually went out and we talked to our big banks. We talked to our partners of Cisco, Amazon, IBM, and we said, what are the specific skill sets that you require when you hire these individuals? And that's how the curriculum was. It was very much all encompassing. And I could send you over a brief synopsis. The last thing we did, we introduced an organizational behavior course that's mandatory for all people. And what that does is we have those that have already released from the military teaching the cultural aspects and the differences between life in the military and life in the tech world. And so that's how we were able to do that.
Thank you very much. There's one other question I really want to get in here, and that has to do with these veterans that are going online. Do you have any issues with their connections with broadband? Are a lot of the veterans in major centers? Are they in rural? And how do you find that? Are there issues with them connecting and being able to access and do the work and do the education that they've signed up for?
And you just hit a little bit of a road bump that we've identified that we're going to need the federal government's help on. And so the vast majority of veterans are able to access because they have a high speed. However, we have those in more remote locations that require satellite connections, and that starts getting very cost prohibitive. And by not having that internet connection, it's actually prevented a couple of people from coming into this program.
Oh, that's a real shame. So it's not equal access to all veterans then, unfortunately. It depends on where you live.
Well, it depends on your internet connection, right? And so the good news is, that is starting to be few and fewer, but it's something to work on.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, that's all our time we have today. I'd like to thank the witnesses. And with that, I adjourn.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of your